reading upon how neurons communicate with each other, and it's some pretty interesting stuff. And if you don't mind, I'd like to share some things with you. Now, communication among neurons starts when one receives a response from a sense receptor or another neuron. The receiving neuron fires an impulse, or an action potential, which is an electrical charge that shoots down the axon. The electricity is generated from chemical processes such as the exchange of electrically charged atoms called ions. The fluid outside of the axon is full of positive ions, while the interior fluid is full of negative ions. Now, when the neuron is in its negative in, negative out state, it is in resting potential. Because the surface of the myelin sheath is selectively permeable, which means that the surface of the axon only lets certain ions pass through. During action potential, the first part of the axon opens up like a gate, and positive ions flood in. This is called depolarization. This causes a chain reaction of opening and closing further down the axon. When the next gate opens, the previous one pumps the positive ions out and closes. This is called the refractory period. Most of the signals that a neuron receives are excitatory, which encourage an action potential. Other signals are inhibitory, which inhibit an action potential. When the excitatory signals reach a minimum intensity, called a threshold, they trigger an action potential. Increasing the initial intensity, however, will not affect the action potential because neurons operate under an all or none response. To respond or not to respond? That is the real question. Once an impulse reaches an axon terminal, it must then jump a gap called a synapse to the dendrite of the next neuron. At the terminal, chemical messengers called neurotransmitters are released and cross the synaptic cleft. The neurotransmitters are like special keys that fit into receptor sites on the receiving neuron. This binding allows for new ions to enter the receiving neuron and excite or inhibit another action potential. Leftover neurotransmitters are reabsorbed by the previous neuron in a process called reuptake.